No worries.
Okay,
All right.
handing it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. This is really cool. It's a beautiful sunny morning, a bit cool. It's definitely autumn feel about it. I've got piles of leaves outside, autumn leaves coming from the tree. So yeah, I'm really excited to answer the question. So I got ahead of time 3 questions, and so I've gone into quite a bit of depth on each of them. So that's really awesome to cover. We've got propagation of berries, which could be happening right now, and we've got some weed control, and then some planting advice for a particularly difficult situation. So we'll just kind of go into that. All right. So Catherine, if you could put up the slideshow, please. So the first question, it was 2 parts. One, it's what's the best way to propagate like boysenberries, the real caneberry plants, and a second question of what's the best trellis system for them. So one of the best ways I know of propagating, let's just keep it with boysenberries. You can use this for blackberries and other berries in the same family, but boysenberries are, I'm just going to call it that. So one of the best ways for propagating boysenberries, if we can have the serpentine layering slide up, please, Catherine. It's called serpentine layering, and so what you see there is an exaggerated version of the diagram. But what's happened is you take a cane of the berry plant and you kind of bend it and bury parts of it under the ground. And where you bury it in the soil should be where a bud or like a branching part is coming, like at least a leaf. So if you're burying the leaf in that section of branch, where the leaf is in the little branches, there's a bud and roots will start to grow where it's buried. So that's serpentine layering. And if you look at the diagram, you can see they've actually got a little hoop, sort of a metal peg, holding that down underground. The next slide shows a different version of exactly the same thing. It's a little bit more simple, where they've just buried the whole thing. So essentially, as long as those canes are flexible enough to be buried, that's how you do it. You just take the cane, you lay it down, you put some dirt over it, wait a little bit for the branch that you've laid down the cane to have developed some roots, and then you can dig it up, cut it, and either put that into a pot or put it into the ground somewhere else. So these berries, they typically do this themselves a little bit anyway. You'll often be able to, if you've got a berry plant, you'll often be able to kind of like dig around outside of it and find that there's a little plantlet, if you like, kind of coming up. But there's another method that you can use, especially if you're not able to dig it up, or you don't have time or space to do all this. And the next slide shows that literally just sticking the top of the bending the top of the branch down and putting it in a pot or in the soil. But there's just the question included, can I put it in a pot? Do I need to put it in a pot, or can I put it straight in the ground? I've heard this before asked, what happens if it's not my plant, it's not my garden, I just want a piece of it. You can grow berries from cuttings. It's a lot harder, and you've got to get that right. This is the super easy way. So you could just take that whole cane, bend it down, and kind of bury a loop of it in a pot of potting mix, and then go back about 3 months later and cut it off, and you've got your plant in a pot. So that's one of the best ways of propagating the boysenberries that I know. And so I'm going to stick with the boysenberries. I'm going to show you some really good trellises for them. Okay, so next slide is, yep. So boysenberry support structures, these are commercial orchard photographs. They are taller than you think. They're taller than a person, so they're probably about 6 feet high, taller than an average person, I guess. at least sort of 6 feet to 2 meters high, and they tend to be at least 3 strong wires. So we're talking about fences, fence posts, decent strainers, wires holding up the weight. Because if you have a look at the next slide, when the berries are in leaf, oh, the next one's another one of the similar structures. Hopefully you can see a bit more clearly the wires going really along there. And what's happening, the canes are longer than that. The canes are something like 4 meters long sometimes. They're kind of crazy long. So what they do is they get them and they fold them up and over the wires. So you end up with this kind of like hoop at the top. And the way berries grow is they'll fruit on the second 2-year-old canes. So 1 year they'll grow a new cane, and you'll get that cane and you'll fold it over and it won't have any fruit. And then the next year, right at the beginning of the season, that will flower and fruit. And then during that summer, it's going to grow more canes, which you'll fold over. Meanwhile, in the winter, you'll identify the difference between the ones that have just had fruit, and you'll cut those off, and the ones that haven't had fruit yet, the new canes, and they get folded up and over. If you don't have tall enough structures, you're going to get it's just going to be a mess. They'll be all over the ground. You won't be able to separate what was this year's and what was last year's. The fruit will be buried underneath stuff, and it's really hard to tell what's what. So the next slide has it's a photograph from a newspaper article of a berry grower in New Zealand. And so you can see how tall the hedge is essentially now compared to the person standing next to it. The fruit's up at a really nice accessible level. So yeah, my advice is do it well, make a proper structure, use wire rather than wooden trellis, because the canes embedded in a wooden trellis are just going to become really difficult to kind of remove, because you actually have to take them out every year after they're finished, the old canes. And so you want a system where it's strong to hold the weight of this huge hedge, but it's also able to be stripped back to just basically the bare wires, and you can see what's going on in the wintertime. All right, so that's boysenberries. Next question, next part of that question was raspberries, and they're a little bit different. So the next slide, you know, with raspberries, how do you propagate them? Literally, they will do it themselves. They pop up in the lawn next to the garden. You're not going to have any trouble. You can dig up the plant, find little bits everywhere. Suckers are the main way. And yeah, you can put them straight in the ground, or you can put them in a pot. They grow actually quite nicely, and they fruit in a pot too, raspberries. So if we look at the so yeah, propagating raspberries, super easy. Just find a plant and take a piece, that make sure it's got some roots, and that's basically all you need to do. Next picture on the bush. So raspberries don't get as tall as boysenberries, and they don't really need that same structure, because they're only ever going to be about a meter or so high. Maybe a little bit more than a meter if it's an established bush, but they're not really as big as, I mean, you're not getting 4-meter canes that you've got to pick up. But it's quite a nice idea if you're growing them against a wall, or in their own kind of strip, where you can even just tie them to themselves. So you can sort of imagine tying a rope around, almost like a vase with a bunch of flowers that they might sort of splay out. And if you can kind of pick them up and keep them upright, then you've still got a pathway that you can walk past, and they're not straggling all over the place. I really like this image of the raspberries because it's got them against a wall. So they're not, one of the things with raspberries, more than boysenberries, is they are escape artists. You could plant them in a garden, and then they could become a pest, because they'll spread. They'll go underneath garden edging and popping up into your lawn, which isn't so bad if you keep mowing the lawn, but it can be a pain. So what's really nice about this particular raspberry setup, it's against a brick wall, so it can't really escape in that direction. It's not going to be damaging the house. and it looks like there's a concrete path between it and the lawn, so you're going to have less escapees going into the lawn side. And you've got the ability then to kind of like tie it back to the wall, so it's not scrabbling around on the ground. And generally, same rules apply where it fruits on the older, it'll fruit on the canes that grew fresh this year. So you take out anything that's had fruit in the winter and just keep it going that way. All right. So that's how to propagate and how to support raspberries and boysenberries. So the next question was quite a curly one. Situation is we've got some very boggy clay loam and they want to grow edibles there, and asking what kind of edibles will grow naturally or happily in a boggy clay loam. What I don't have is information on, is it a sunny situation? Is it a cold, frosty valley? For example, those could make, is it a warm northern slope? Those could make quite a bit of difference about what you can get away with. So I'm going to assume that all the other conditions are quite sunny, because if you're trying to grow edibles in a damp, cold, frosty, boggy clay loam, then I would suggest maybe you should be looking at some real estate instead. So let's assume it's quite a sunny, warm spot, but the soil is a bit of a bog there. So just to quickly answer your question about what you could plant without doing anything else, if you wanted to grow peaches or plums, you could do it as long as you choose a plum rootstock. Plum rootstocks are the ones that are sold more in Auckland, where they've got a lot of really clay soil, and they do better with that kind of wet feet. If you have peaches or plums on a peach rootstock, they are the ones that do better in sandy coastal conditions, so it wouldn't be suitable. You would be marginal for just about any other fruit tree without doing some remedial work to the soil. So I would recommend looking at shallow rooting plants like berries and Jerusalem artichokes. So Jerusalem artichoke is an interesting kind of edible in that some people can't stand it. Its common name is fartichoke. It's not actually in the artichoke family, it's in the sunflower family, and it's got a little like moundy knobble that grows underneath it. But I often see them on roadsides growing near drains, and I have it planted at my property at the bottom of a slope where the water runs and it floods there quite often. So it survives cold winters because it's deciduous and dormant, and then it comes up in the summer and it actually I think it's doing a good job absorbing a lot of water too. So even if you were to put other things there, Jerusalem artichoke might help kind of soak stuff up. But my advice would be, just you need to change this environment. So if you are going to plant trees, you want to raise them up on mounds. So even if you're digging the exact soil that you've got and mounding that up, and then putting the tree on the mound, so they've got just that extra bit of drainage in the surrounding water table, that will be a really big help. Mound them up. If you're wanting to have edibles that are like berries or vegetables, I would raise the garden, get them out and out of that wet feet. I don't, where we live, I'm in the Bay of Plenty. We have sandy loam soils, and raised gardens don't make a lot of sense for us here. We've got good drainage. But if you've got a boggy clay loam and you're just wanting to grow a few edibles, a box makes a lot of sense for you. And just chuck as much organic matter as you can into that to increase the drainage, the ability for it to just not be boggy and having that wet feet. Gypsum is a really nice addition to break up the clay, but gypsum on its own isn't going to solve your bog problem. That's a water table issue. And so the next thing is really think about digging some drainage, and some serious drainage, drainage ditches that you end up, you can put in mold drains are where you kind of bury a pipe or you bury a rocks so that you're not tripping over it, but it's still there in the ground as a kind of a drainage away. Or you could be thinking about digging a big trench and even putting a bridge over it if you need to. Getting the water and lowering the water table is going to be really important for most things to grow. So there was a second part to the question, which was, well, is there anything I could plant that could absorb the water and kind of alleviate the pressure? So if you've gone through the process of raising the garden, mounding them up, digging drainage, the next step would be along that sort of drainage area, you could be planting things like willow trees are known probably at the beginning where the water is coming onto the property, depending on the kind of slope you want, some willows at the beginning to kind of slow that flooding coming in. I don't know the size of the property, and assuming it's not like a big farm where you can just, you know, dig a moat and put in some willow trees. On a smaller scale, you might just be wanting to put in a few rushes, reeds, flaxes, the kind of native plants that can help just build up that natural aeration and can tolerate those conditions. So yeah, I hope that kind of covers it. I would be much more focused on not just planting something now, but really improving the site so that what you plant will do well over a longer time. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide.
Hey, Kazel, before
Oh,
you
yes.
go, I think there's a number of people who are new to gardening. Your very first, you were talking about rootstock. Would you mind just saying a little bit about what rootstock is?
Yeah, no, really good question, and I think that's really brilliant to go back to the basics on that as well. So when you buy a fruit tree, it tends to be a really nice cultivar, something that you like the taste of, and it can be put onto a rootstock that's suitable to the area that you want to grow. So you're basically taking the top half of one tree and putting it on the roots of another tree, and you kind of make this hybrid tree out of the top of one and the bottom of the other. It's a bit of Frankenstein's monster going on there. But what's brilliant about that is it means that you could have the same cultivar of plum, for example, something that everybody really likes, like a Billington plum, beautiful flavor, and you could have those growing everywhere from Northland down to Otago because you're putting them on different roots that are suitable for the different areas. So peaches and plums are quite interesting because they can actually go onto each other. You can put a peach on a plum root, or you can put a plum on a peach root. And this is one of the only things. So apples go on apple roots, and pears tend to go on a pear root or a quince root, but peaches and plums can go on each other. And what's nice about that is you can choose the roots that are suited to your soil, where you're choosing the fruit that's suited to maybe your climate, the above ground parts, the climate, your preferences. If you're going to a garden centre, typically you don't get to choose. I prefer that you go to, I would recommend that you go to a nursery that is a specialist grafting and growing in your area. So there's nurseries in the North Island that specifically have really good cultivars for the North Island, and they'll be able to tell you whether it's suitable for, they would call it heavy soil. Heavy soil or light soil tends to be the words that they use. And so clay and boggy is considered a heavy, sand and free draining is considered light. So you're thinking about like how much air it is. So in the North Island, you'll tend to get them saying this, if you want this apple, put it on that rootstock if you have this type of soil. Yeah, get back to me if you have any trouble trying to sort that out. If you once you get onto websites and nurseries, there's heaps of them that do that. And always the local ones will have the cultivars and the rootstocks naturally, usually, that are good for the soil in your area. So if I went, I wouldn't drive to Auckland to buy fruit trees, even if they were on sale, and bring them back to the bay, because they're just different soil types. I would want to stick with my local nurseries that are growing things that they know do well here.
Hazel, there's another question about rootstock that's suitable for topaz pumice type soil. Any ideas?
Yeah, so pumice would be considered light. One of the things that you've got in Taupo is heavy frosts as well. So whatever your plants you're going to choose need to be very cold tolerant. And most of the peaches, plums would be, so you wouldn't have any trouble there. So I don't know the specific names of the rootstocks, but again, you know, pumice soil is considered to be quite light. In some ways, it's considered to be quite nutrient deficient. So you want to be, again, you know, organic matter is the answer to everything. So organic matter will solve a lot of the too much drainage, too dryness that you might get if it's super free draining or doesn't have enough nutrients. But it also solves the too much water issue as well. It's kind of the magic ingredient. And when I'm talking about organic matter, I don't know if I need to go into detail on that, but for a beginner, just think compost. Think something that's broken down, looks like soil, but is not made of dirt. It's the product of your compost heap, and as much of that as you can put on as possible.
Good. I think that's all the questions on that topic for now.
Okay, I'm going to take questions at the end anyway, and I think we're going to make great time because I was only given 3 to kind of go into detail for. So we'll talk about the next one, which is a weed management issue, essentially. The question is how to remove yuccas. And so this is a question from the Bay of Plenty. It's a local student. So this, I put in a picture of a yucca in case you don't know what they are. They're commonly sold in garden centres as houseplants because they can tolerate really dry conditions. But when you put them outside, they can grow really fast. They like it in our sort of coastal, sandy, sunny situations. This is a plant that would be completely unknown to gardens in most of the South Island, where it gets really cold. And so, you know, the answer to how do you remove it and keep it removed, and any kind of looking at a weed, I want to go back to the plant physiology. I want to know as much about the plant in particular, the weed in particular, so that I can target my control to it. So this advice of, you know, go back to the plant physiology and think about that. I want to give you the yucca as an example. And this is really teaching you how to think about weeds and how you might manage them. So what we know about the yucca is it's a lily. You might not have known that, but I do. So it's a lily, which is really interesting. It's a tall tree lily. It's a lot like a sort of a cabbage tree. It has no wood. So when you cut it, it's just fibrous all the way through. It's not something that you could ever make a table out of. It has no wood and it's a lily, so that gives me some information right there. I know where it's from. It's a sort of a Mexican plant, South America. It likes dry. It likes the heat. It does well in deserts. It does well indoors, so it doesn't need lots of direct sunlight, but it's perfectly happy being dried out in a pot for months on end. And it probably doesn't mind too much salt. It tends to do really well on beach sides because of the, you know, sandy soil. It does well there. Okay. So I'm telling you what it likes, because how to kill it would kind of involve doing the opposite of what it likes, right? You're not going to kill this plant very easily by drying it out, for example. It's totally happy with that. All right, and so there's a new word on the next point, which is the hypocotyl zone. And the hypocotyl zone There's a fancy word for where does it grow from? Where can it grow new shoots from? Because some plants can turn their roots into shoots, and that makes them really weedy. Other plants just cannot. Some plants have underground bulbs that help them to recover if you take the top off, or they've got rhizomes underground. So some yucca species have rhizomes, but this one that we commonly have in New Zealand doesn't. And they cannot grow from a root cutting. So essentially, if you cut off the top down to the root, it can't regrow from that. Think of there are weeds that can. Dandelion is one. Dandelion can grow. You can cut the top off completely and it will grow from quite a long way down. The root will regrow. Dock is another, will regrow from root fragments. But yuccas cannot. So if we go to the next slide, once we've got some information, about what the plant is like, now we've got some ideas about how to deal with that. So we know that it can't regrow from the roots. That means if you just cut it really, really low, you can stop it from shooting up. It may have some underground stem, which is a bit of a weird term, I guess, but some plants will have underground stems. If it does that, it'll start shooting up from those. So some ideas I saw on the net were drill holes in the base and fill with salt and vinegar. I was thinking just drill holes in the base and fill it with water. You can rot these plants much more easily than you can dry them out. I don't know what the vinegar is supposed to be doing to the plant. Maybe just making it too acidic and the plant doesn't like it. The vinegar doesn't stay acidic for very long. It'll kill what it touches, but it's not going to really absorb or penetrate. So I would think you'd have a better success rate. And the salt, the purpose of the salt is to desiccate the plant. You fill it with salt and it sort of draws out the moisture. Well, we've already established this plant doesn't really care that much about salt. You'd have to use a lot of salt. And then potentially you've got salt in your garden. So if you ever wanted to plant anything where that yucca was, you've got a saline issue. So even though the internet advice will tell you things like drill holes and fill it with salt and water, my advice would be drill holes in the base and fill it with water and allow it to keep filling with water because you're trying to drown and rot the thing. And I was like, well, if I had this issue here, I could cut it down to the base and then just do anything I could to get it to rot. Wet grass clippings, a bit of weed mat over the top of that, really hold it in, let the grass rot down. I'm pretty sure the yucca is going to hate that. Basically you're putting a hot compost on top of it. I'm not worried about the heat so much, but I really want it warm and wet and rotting. And then the other thing that you can do, if you can cut it down to as low a stump as possible, it'll probably reshoot. And it might start reshooting from the base. But if you're onto it, and they're quite easy to kind of pop off the leaves when they start to form. And eventually it won't have any more sites left where those leaves, where the side branches can come from. It'll have run out of buds or potential buds, and it can't make new ones. So every time it shoots up, just rip them off or kick them off, and eventually it'll be exhausted and start to rot. So that's how you use the plant's physiology against it. You go, well, what is this plant like? How can I give it the opposite of what it likes? Yeah. And I think that was it for the questions.
Yeah, that was it for the questions, but I think there's a few more.
Oh yeah, let's so without any preparation, before I start getting the questions in the wild, I'm not an expert on everything. I've got really good plant general knowledge, but nobody knows everything about everything. So bear with me if I go, ooh, I'd like to answer that question. Maybe give me a week and I'll come back to it with a pretty slide next time. Yeah?
That works fine. Why don't we start with the question about grapevines that came through. Tell you what, guys, I think what we'll do, just so we don't have this huge clash of mics and stuff, I'll just try going sort of alphabetical order. So Kaisel's going to answer a question, and then I'll invite Brendan, Chloe, or is it Christy? I just see what your phone looks like. I'll invite sort of the A, B's, and C people to unmute your mic and ask your questions, and we'll just work our way down the alphabet. So over to you, Kaisel.
Nice strategy. Okay, so there was a question about how to get rid of grape prunings. Is that what the question was?
Yeah, and just sort of a lot of hard things that are hanging out on the property. How do you get rid of them?
Yeah, it's a quite tricky right now because there's been a fire ban for quite some time. Grape is really interesting. It's a vine, and you would think that it would be really soft like a berry or something like that, but grape wood is incredibly hard wood. It sets almost like a rock, so it's quite hard to cut if you let it get too far. So if you've got something like a grape stump and you're trying to get rid of it, you'll find it's going to blunt your tools. You're going to need a really strong saw to cut it up, chainsaw or the like, in the first place. And then because it's such a hard wood, you're thinking about something like, so soft woods decompose pretty quickly. You can mulch them, you can put them through your mulcher without breaking it. Something like a hardwood is almost like a rock. You're thinking railway sleeper type macrocarpa, and grape would be in that category. So I would advocate for burning it, especially if you had a fire for other purposes. Makes great kindling and firewood. Could be a bit hard right now.
How about biochar?
Oh yeah. I think though typically biochar tends to be softer stuff, but yeah, it certainly would make good charcoal because it would light and then you'd put it out. I'd worry that but even then, what are you going to do with it? You could bury it, and it's just going to stay buried for a really long time. It's not going to regrow. There's not that many options right now. If fires aren't an option, potentially. I mean, it's winter, and if you don't have a house fire, you could be putting it in bags and putting it on the roadside, selling it for $20 a bag of grape. It's a very good firewood. But yeah, I'm not quite sure what the question, if you're having trouble removing it, like cutting it down and it's blunting all your tools, you might just need to get some professionals in and a proper arborist, because your pruning saw, I think this is the thing. If you're using a pruning saw, but it's a stump and it's already, or even really grapes are just so hard. Pruning saws are designed, they've got nice soft teeth, they go in both directions, and they are designed to cut living wood, a tree with sap and water in it. You almost want to be looking at your woodwork saws, something that's designed for cutting really dry woods already, because otherwise you're going to really struggle. You'll blunt your pruning saw on a grape stump. I would be getting a chainsaw out, even if it's just a small one. They're not easy.
Okay, so anybody at the top of the alphabet, do you want to unmute your mic and ask a question? Chloe, you got all your question answered about your soil and everything? A thumbs up from Chloe, good.
Nice. Okay. I'm glad I could help, Chloe. That's cool.
That was great.
Yeah, so Chloe, because it was your question and on the soil, do you have any more details just about what the site is really like, and the size or the slope, or?
Yeah, so it's a moderate slope, and it's sunny, just sort of it's kind of along the edge of a bigger drainage swale. There's kind of like but all the edges of my property have these sort of boggy ditches, and it's sort of around the edges that I want to do planting.
Yeah. Does that help to suggest to raise it up?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
I think probably interplanting with some flaxes and reeds and things as well.
Yeah. So you could have something like a fruit tree and then a flax sort of drawing up the moisture, and then another fruit tree a little bit further along.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, that's good. That's good. I mean, what's really neat is putting edibles in every inch of your land. You know, that's kind of the dream, isn't it? Where every part is used. We're not wasting anything. And I really like that. But sometimes you're pushing trouble uphill because it's you know, maybe it's just not suitable, and you'd be better off planting something elsewhere.
Yeah.
Would Chloe's property be friendly to blueberries or cranberries or some boggy, acidy loving plant?
So acid loving aren't necessarily boggy loving. The reason we plant blueberries in peat is not because they like the bog. They can tolerate the bog, but what they want is the acid. And so I hesitated to kind of recommend blueberries because I don't actually know what the pH is. Although berry fruit, you know, might be a good thing. I don't think they particularly do that well in wet soil. They can still get you know, died back from too much. Even in the peat, we try to drain them. So yeah, you could give blueberries a try, just like all the other berries. And the main thing with the berries is they're quite shallow rooting, so they're not going to get themselves stuck under the water table.
Yeah,
that's the main point.
And see how it goes, maybe.
Yeah, chuck them in and see how you go. That's my my aunt's advice to me, which I got when I was quite young, and I think is still the best advice ever. Find out what grows and then plant lots of it. And so you gotta do a kind of a scattergun approach at first and go, okay, well, this one worked, I'm going to propagate more of those. So maybe you think raspberries are your success story. Boom, fill the place with raspberries.
That's great. Okay, Chloe, do you want to mute yourself again? And just going down the alphabet, let's see. I've got Franny's here, and Jane, and Karen, and Leela's here. Do any of you guys have any questions you want to pose? I can add Linda. Linda, do you have a question, or is it Loki? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, hi, it's Lockie.
Yeah.
There you go. And thank you for adding me so late notice too. I appreciate that.
Do you want to see you, or do you want to remain a black square? You can click start video if you want to.
G'day.
There you go. Hi, nice to see you.
So I've got a question about convolvulus. I've been dealing with that for probably 4 years in my home garden, and it's a never-ending battle, as you can imagine. Yes. It's all organic. I'm on a bio-certified organic property, so chemicals out of the question, which is good too. But it's a never-ending battle of digging it, and yeah, not winning.
Okay. No, I think you already know that I don't have a good solution for you. What I can do is that I can explain to everybody why convolvulus is such a nasty weed. When you're looking at what its environment is and what it likes, it just absolutely thrives in our climate. There's almost nothing that knocks it back. It doesn't have natural predators here, so there's really nothing that eats it, and it actually doesn't seem to have many diseases either. And it grows from tiny little fragments, root fragments it will regrow from constantly, and you can dig it out and feel like you're spreading it. It's voracious, tough, healthy, loves it here, and is incredibly difficult to remove. So, you know, I'm really sorry, Lockie, that you're dealing with convolvulus. I'm glad that you're onto it and you're working hard. It's one of these things that if it's coming in from the neighbors, for example, then you just always, unless everybody is absolutely dedicated to removing it and eliminating it, as long as there's a source of reinfection, it's just going to keep being a problem for you, no matter how much time and effort you put in. What you are doing, trying to remove every last little fragment and not let it get established again, not let it sort of pop up, is the best thing. You trying to exhaust it, trying to get it back to the source. But if you take off that pressure for even, a year or a few months, it'll re-establish, get itself some health, and be back with a vengeance.
Yeah.
So the only other kind of drastic non-organic action would be a complete kind of blanket on the soil where it is. So it's a matter of almost sort of sterilizing the land, where you might, depending on what's there, and it tends to be one of these things that it's not a problem in your lawn, because you mow it and it doesn't cause an issue. It's a problem because it's climbing up trees and through fences and getting in behind and under roots of other things that you can't quite get to. So it has these little pockets where it can't be removed from, right? And so you could be as drastic as pulling out trees that are making it hard for you to get out the last little bit, or covering with black plastic areas where it's sort of known to come in from, taking out wooden fences and putting in brick walls, that kind of real like drastic prevention.
Bring in the reinforcements. Step
it up a little. Yeah, I'm really sorry. So one of the positive things that's happening in the area of convolvulus control is I think it's DOC. It could be, it's not plant and food, but hort research, and there's research being done in any case, I think, through councils to introduce pests to that plant, but we would call them a beneficial kind of predator of the plant. So something that's going to eat it, or a disease that's going to kill it, or something that's going to like lay its eggs in the seeds so that they don't spread. We've got a few of those biological controls that come in for other things with great success. There's one in the Bay of Plenty. There's a psyllid on woolly nightshade. There's a little weevil that eats a Tradescantia at the moment, and there is one of the best success stories was the ragwort moth brought in for farmers. So there's research on that, but until it arrives, just keep slogging away at it.
Yeah. No, thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't give you better support other than, moral support. Keep going.
Yeah, no, it is a bit like that. I've got half the garden covered this winter in corrugated iron, cardboard and then corrugated iron to hopefully trap out any light from getting in and hopefully keep them at bay.
Well, I mean, another thing you can do with that corrugated iron is you can literally bury it, as though you're trying to stop rabbits digging into your garden. Because you can, it spreads through these sort of underground rhizomes, but it's only going so deep. So if you were able to create a barrier of that's your side and this is my side, you might be able to. I do it with kikuyu for my vegetable gardens. I've buried corrugated iron around them, and it really does stop it from going. You're just spreading back in again. So there's methods like that where you kind of maybe dig a trench out, concrete it, a fence or a barrier that could be helpful.
It's good. I think, Linda, did you put your hand up? Did you have a question, Linda? You can unmute yourself. There you go.
Mine was the same, thanks.
Oh, the same weed questions?
Yes.
Oh, brilliant. So I answered it for you both.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah,
So
a
I have
lot
to,
harder.
is
Oh,
convolvulus the pretty stuff that I bought at the nursery that has this nice purple flower and droops over my wall? Did I just buy something that's going to cause me this problem? Or are there different kinds?
No,
or what?
it might be in the same yeah, you do have a pretty little convolvulus family of plant, Catherine. You've got a nice little blue one. It's morning glory is its common name, and yes, yours is a much it's like a pussycat compared to a lion. You've got, it's no comparison really. Same family, but certainly not as weedy. So morning glory is what it's, and it is beautiful, but I've seen it smother entire valleys, entire hillsides of native bush, and it's you stop thinking it's pretty once you've seen it just destroy so much. So its other common name is bindweed. So it's got morning glory and bindweed as two common names. The flowers are like this big and sort of a purpley blue. And one of the ways that you recognize that family is it's a trumpet flower. Like there's only one petal, if you like. It's just a full circle. Yeah. Yeah, but Catherine, your one is fine. And if anybody sold convolvulus at a garden centre that was the original bindweed, they would lose their license to sell plants. Get a fine slapped on them pretty fast, I think. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so let's see. Any more questions?
Yeah, quick
It looks like,
question.
yep, there's Leela. Hi, Leela.
Hi. Hey,
Hey.
is now a good time to plant an avocado tree? Or should I wait for spring?
I've just seen a debate on this recently, and I think the answer is it depends, because I think the answer is that depends, and it does depend on how warm your soil is. So commercial growers were saying it's too late. You've missed the window of warm soil. Avocados do need it warm. You've missed the window of warm soil. We're going into cold soil season. Even though they do have root growth at this time, you're going to get more frost damage and less establishment. Up north, you might get away with it a little bit more, but I think we're quite much, if you get frosts, we're already down to quite cold nights, like sort of 5 to 7 degrees, and it's that cold soil that really slows them down. So while I would have said at the beginning of March and even April, we're actually in May now. It's June's just around the corner, and I think it's too late. When you do plant it in spring, I would wait again until that risk of frost is over. So typically the avocado planting season is either November or March. Okay. So you could do it in November. You've missed frosts, but you risk drought. So as long as you can water that plant through the summer, then it should get established, and you don't need to put the frost cage around it, so it gets a little bit bigger and a bit more established before it starts getting cold again. Or you wait until March, you plant it with a nice frost enclosure, windbreak frost enclosure over it, and let it get established so that it's good by the time it starts getting cold. But yeah, now is just, we've missed it. Sorry, just really.
That's all right. And what about peaches? I've got 2 peaches.
Yeah. Are they in pots and bags? Yeah, chuck them in now. Chuck them in straight away. Just anything that you want to, because they're still drawing down their nutrition a little bit, and they'll be pushing out roots pretty quickly soon. They're much more cold tolerant than an avocado, and they'll be totally fine. Anything you want to, tree planting now is not too late for most things. But yeah, for non-deciduous, even, yeah, it's funny because the weather does change quite quickly. And so again, it depends on your spot.
Okay, thank you.
Who have we got next? Yvonne or Sharon? Do you have a lurking question? Or anybody else? Okay, now it's open floor. Anybody want to unmute themselves?
Hi, it's Rania here.
Hey.
Hi, sorry, I've got a similar problem to the yucca. How do you get rid of cabbage trees that keep sprouting up?
Okay, so it is almost identical to the yucca, except the difference is that cabbage trees belong here, and they really like our climate, even the cold and the wet. I would be doing the same thing though, cabbage tree, it depends on the cultivar of cabbage tree. That we've got mountain cabbage trees and we've got swamp cabbage trees. If it's bought from a garden centre, it's probably a little bit more temperamental, and you could try rotting it just as easily. But their whole idea of just keep knocking, like cut it as far down to the ground as possible, and just keep breaking off the regrowth shoots. They're not as tough as you think, and they will, drilling a hole in it to put the water in, they will rot eventually. So yeah, I think it's the same advice really could be applied to both of them. They're very similar. They're in the same family.
Could you put black plastic over the base?
Yeah. I mean, the black plastic is going to starve it of sunlight. It's going to starve it of, it's going to sort of keep that environment a bit anaerobic, I guess. My idea was to pour lawn clippings over it and then put the black plastic over, because the lawn clippings are going to make it really unhappy, really just kind of rotting. So the black plastic was really to kind of keep that down. Otherwise, you could experience that tree being strong enough to kind of push the plastic up, which is a bit of a pain. So it's about rotting it is the reason for plastic. Yeah.
Okay. I've got one more. My avocado tree's got kind of like, I should have bought a specimen, but it looks like rust or something. Do they get rust?
Sorry, which tree?
The avocado tree on its leaves.
They don't get rust.
Sort of brown.
They don't get, yeah. So underneath, you might be looking at, especially this time of year, and especially if it's really sort of along the veins, you are probably looking at mite damage, which happens right now. Winter and mites are quite common. And what happens with the avocados is the underside of the leaf gets really dirty looking along the veins, with a tiny little mites that are almost barely perceptible to the naked eye. If you use sort of a 10 times lens, you might see a little white, almost like a mini aphid type thing under the leaf. Yeah, much smaller than an aphid. So they are sucking the leaves dry, and what you get is they'll fall off. You get leaf drop if the mites are too bad. But I think it's a response of the tree itself trying to get rid of them. If you've got an organic property, just one tree, it's just you're not going to go to the extent of getting a commercial spray in. And just know that the trees have a habit of tolerating this, and then later they we'll get tiny little ladybirds that will eat those mites. But typically the mites come when the tree is already stressed, and the tree will be stressed because it probably hasn't been pruned for a really long time. So you want to get the chainsaw out and bring those branches down. How big is it?
Oh, it's just like a meter. It's just a baby.
Oh, it's a baby tree, so it's stressed because it's just young. Yeah, without knowing for sure whether it is mites that's causing that damage on the leaves. Sometimes there's little molds that grow, like a little black spotty look on a leaf. No one's really sure what causes that, but it's not really a problem. Doesn't kind of do any harm, so everybody just ignores it. It's not something, because I monitor avocados, and I've seen sort of moldy spots on leaves, and I just ignore them. They don't they're sort of neither here nor there. When you've just got the one tree and it's covered in it, it can be quite alarming. I think the best hope is just keep that tree protected from frost. Hopefully when you planted it, it went into a good sort of well-prepared hole and it's not overfed or anything like that. And then just wait for that spring flush. Normally the old leaves just kind of look scrappy and ugly. So avocados, they're not deciduous, right? That doesn't mean that they keep their leaves forever. Old leaves get the same kind of effect of autumn, and they do fall off eventually and they get replaced by the spring flush. So they keep a little bit longer than a deciduous tree, but they're still being replaced. And you'll get a number of flushes through the seasons with avocados. I doubt we'll get one. I doubt we'll get one before spring. And so those leaves just kind of hold and look a bit ugly for a while. They're okay.
So would I need to put frost cloth over these babies over the winter?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah, if they're only 1 meter high and you get frost, your tree will die if it's exposed to frost. You must frost protect a young tree. And we're not just talking about, okay, so if you've got a young tree that's susceptible to frost, it's the whole trunk that's susceptible. You know how an avocado stem is quite green, a branch is quite green, and then later it develops wood around the trunk. And a young tree that's got a trunk that's quite small, it could get frost right into those tender parts of the trunk, and that's the whole tree gone if that happens. You must protect it from frost. So what you see built around avocado trees in commercial orchards is a kind of a meter by meter square surround of windbreak, and then a dome over the top of they'll put like pipe, and then the frost cloth goes on top of that, and that's permanent. That stays all year round. It's a dome over the top and the windbreak around the edges. We talk about planting. There used to be it's a saying, you dig a $10 hole for a $1 plant, and that's talking about the soil amendments and all the care and attention that you put in, and then the plant grows really well. Avocados are like that. There's a huge amount of preparation that goes in the hole and the tree surround, so that you might have spent, say, $50 buying the tree, but you can expect to spend at least another $100 on the hole, the frame and stuff at first, and then you take that away when the tree's about 2 years old, typically.
But would they get enough sunlight?
Yeah, the frost cloth is permanent for the first year of its life. They grow pretty fast under there. It keeps it warmer. Yeah.
What about a tree, one of the young ones? I've got one that's 1 meter and one's about 2 meters. With the 2 meter one.
If it's already 2 meters, that's about the stage that we start taking it. Like once it's pushed its way out of the tree surround, we take it off. So frost works in interesting ways. It settles and it can kind of build up, almost like filling a swimming pool. So if you imagine frost in an empty swimming pool, so the swimming pool is an example of it, like a valley. So frost can pour in one edge of the swimming pool and fill it up. And what we see in some orchards that are planted in valleys is the frost tide line can be really high. So unless you're in a situation where you are capturing and filling with this cold, frosty air that goes really high, 2 meters should be okay.
Okay.
I've seen this in a situation where an orchard where they had a really high frost tide line, and they weren't the end of the valley. There was a shelter belt, and then there was another paddock lower, and their solution was to trim up the shelter belt so that the frost could literally pour away. The shelter belt was actually doing the job of stopping the frost and building it up, like the walls of the swimming pool, but just by yeah, almost like taking the fence down, allowing the frost to sweep further down the valley, they could get away with it a little bit more. But they lost all their crop the first couple of years before we figured it out.
So frost, is it at 0 degrees? When does the frost?
I don't think it requires it to be 0. I think frost can hit at not quite 0, which is weird because it's freezing, right? But it's a peculiar aspect of there being no breeze and this kind of no breeze and a clear night, and so the cold just kind of comes down from above and settles. So the frost itself is making it colder in a way, and that's one of the reasons that one of the preventions of frost is helicopters. They put fans. They put sort of helicopter fans to stir up the air, or they will fly helicopters around at night. Big orchards, say in Hawke's Bay, they'll get that a bit, because just by stirring it up, it stops it from settling, and that's that settling that freezes the plants and causes damage.
Oh, thank you. That was really helpful.
Yeah. Climatologies. Climatology today.
I mean, we should probably just add that some fruiting trees really like frost, and they need a certain amount of cold, otherwise you don't get anything. So as a permaculturalist, I would say, you got frost, let's put cherries in there, let's put apricots or something in there.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Planning for the edges. I think one of the things about avocados is that they do really well in the North Island, above sort of a Taupo. They do really well in the North Island, and but they do need protection, particularly when they're young. There are some places that are just harder for them to get themselves established, but it's that young, fragile stage that once they get past that, they're good. Yeah, they're not from an area that they would ever get frost originally.
Have we got a last question or two?
Hi, it's Sharon here. I'm wondering if you can grow peaches from the stones and nectarines from the stones.
Absolutely. What you get when you grow a plant, a fruiting tree like that from a stone, is you're getting a new cultivar that's never been tried before. It's an individual, so you get naming rights if it turns out to be really good. There are some, the black peach and golden queen are known to kind of come true to type, so they tend to be, I guess you'd call that like a dominant trait. So even though the peach might be crossed with another pollinator, the parent has the dominant trait, so it's still going to be very much like a golden queen or a black peach when it's mature. There will be some sort of straying, and so you've got some black peaches that are more black inside, more white. Some are freestone, some are clingstone. But yeah, certainly you can grow them from seed. But what you don't know when you grow it from a seed is what its roots are going to be like and the health of the roots. You also don't know what the vigor of the tree is going to be like. And one of the things that sort of the unwary to this game might not realize is that some peaches are more dwarfing naturally than others, and we tend to use those as rootstocks to keep the height of the peach down to a manageable level. If you don't do this, you'll end up with just this giant of a thing. And I've had that. My son planted a nectarine seed, and it was in the wrong place, but I left it there, and we had a really good crop of nectarines this year, but we certainly needed a ladder to get them. It's just out of control how fast this tree is growing on its own roots. So my plan is to take a scion of that peach, so some budwood, and put it onto a golden peach seedling. So and use that as the rootstock. I don't want the golden queen, I want the roots, because I know that it's going to be just that little bit less vigorous. So the answer is yeah, definitely go for it. That's how we get new stuff. It's always an experiment, and you might be really successful or it might not work, but it's certainly worth a go. And you'll find out soon enough. You'll find out within sort of 3 or 4 years whether you even like it and what the health of it's like. I've got a big enough property that I can chuck in a whole bunch of seedlings that I've, peaches and nectarines that I've grown from seed. And if I go, oh, that one wasn't particularly special or anything, I can just cut it down and start again. If you're in a really small space, my advice tends to be buy a known cultivar and a good rootstock, and leave the sort of the breeding to people with bigger blocks.
Okay. We just had a really nice nectarine. I thought I'd try and grow it.
Yeah.
And we've got a property that we can do that on as well.
So yeah.
Are you meant to crack the stone open and plant the kernel, or do you leave it to crack itself open?
That's a science that there's a hot debate amongst many people, and I haven't seen definitive answers of either of those. I think a little bit of cracking of the stone but leaving the kernel inside of it can help. I've seen where they've cracked it and removed it and then it just rots. I've seen it where you haven't cracked it and it doesn't open. I've seen it where you either put them in the fridge and then planted them, and that was mixed success, or just put them straight outside and expose them to natural winter and cold with mixed success as well. I don't know what they do commercially. And so I'm just seeing what people are doing anecdotally, and it seems to be a mixed bag. The one thing I would say about your peach that you ate that you really liked and you've got the stone for is you have no idea what the growing conditions of that peach was. If it's a commercial variety that you've bought at a supermarket, it could have been imported from overseas potentially. It could be a really tasty peach, but that requires a lot of sprays in order to get it to market. And so I would be much more inclined to grow from seed a peach that came from somebody's garden near you than I would from something that I've bought and eaten from a supermarket.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Yay. Neat.
Okay. Oh, hi, it's Fran again. Is that all right?
Yeah, we've got time. This will be our last question, probably.
Is it okay? I've got a dwarf lemon, it's like 70 centimetres high.
Yep.
Is it okay to transplant it to a different spot at the moment?
Yeah, again, I would have been tempted to do that in March rather than May. So what you're attempting to do is move it and relocate it in quite a cold time. March is a really good time. So in March, what you could be doing is you can be digging around it in February to sort of pre-damage any roots. And then you can fully dig it up and move it. March is the best time for transplanting. So we're moving into May, won't be long until it's June. If you're going to put it in a pot, because it is just a dwarf, it's just a little thing, and maybe you're moving and relocating and you want to take it with you, that would be quite sensible because you can keep that pot warmer and it gives that plant a chance to establish roots in a protected environment. Yeah.
When would I leave it then? It's just not quite in the right spot.
Yeah, it's I mean, how long has it been in the ground? Because it's quite little, so it might be that it doesn't have any roots to disturb. If you can dig a big enough hole around it and you're really not damaging it because it's only just a little thing and it hasn't been there long, then it's no different to buying it from the garden centre and planting it now. It would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the ground anyway, so it's already Yeah, if you can just try and dig it out without doing any damage to it, dig a big enough root ball so that you really, if you can make it so that that plant doesn't even notice, then you've got then you're onto a winner. If it's if it's well established, but because it's a dwarf, it probably hasn't even really grown much anyway.
Okay, so do that before the winter.
Yeah, give it a go. Get out there this weekend. It's it's still sunny for a bit, and there's always hope.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
There was one more question about how you increase fruiting on feijoas.
Prune them. First you prune it, and then you plant another one, and then you also understand that this was a weird year for feijoas, and they I don't know what the flowering season was like. I don't know where the birds were at. Something was up. Maybe there was a storm, but a lot of people found that their feijoa crop was less than usual. We've also had this year for the first time in the Bay, and I don't know where this question is coming from, but New Zealand now, we've got the guava moth is now present in the country. And while I haven't really found it inside my fruit, I suspect that it was in there early, and that's caused early fruit to drop that we might not have noticed. So there's two things going on. I don't know what went wrong with the pollination this year. I would have expected a higher fruit set off most feijoas, but pruning is really important. If you don't prune a feijoa, the fruit just gets smaller and smaller, and they just don't. It's like a fractal. They're dividing, and then the branch divides again, and then those divide again. So you've got one root structure that's then trying to support 20, 30 little branches. Much better to trim that down, have that one root supporting 5 branches, and then you've got room for the blackbirds, which are the pollinators, to flit from flower to flower to flower. So commercial feijoas, they say, prune them so that a seagull can fly through it. You want a huge gap. You want to be able to see. It's not a hedge plant. This is an open looking shrub there. Keep it low, keep it open. That way the birds can pollinate the flowers. And if you're really still struggling to get pollination, buy another feijoa. Something else, if you've got a named cultivar, then buy one that's got a different name, so that they will cross each other. The pollen from one will feed the other one.
Thank you, Kaisel.
All right, I hope that helps. Yeah, I mean, and you can feed them as well. They're pretty hungry little guys, so give them plenty of food.
So Kaisel, here's sort of the last slide of the presentation. This is the dates for the courses that we have coming up. I guess I just want to say I've been working with Kaisel for a while now, and I consistently just love how she presents this information. It's straight, it's easy, it's funny. It balances out all her education plus all her experience in her own garden. And that's why I'm so excited about offering these classes. So it's an odd time. We used to do them face-to-face here at my property, and we do the pruning ones up at Kaisel's. But now it's like, well, let's offer some online. And we've had a lot of interest from people outside of Tauranga. So we're doing that growth about having it online, and we'll have it face-to-face again once the alert levels allow. So I think those of you got a sense of kind of her style, and these are the workshops that we've got coming up, and it's designed over a period of a year to just really thoroughly go into everything that you need to know. There's 4 sessions on soils. There's sort of 4 on propagation, plus we added seed saving and tree grafting, because last year we found we needed more time for that. We cover about weeds, pests, beneficials, companion planting. So I would just encourage any of you who are interested in really getting a thorough education to join up and study with us. And it's all starting next month. We're starting June 6th or June 9th. We're doing 2 during a month because we find people have different schedules. Kazel, anything else you want to say?
Yeah. Yes. So I mean, I'm excited to be running the courses. Like Catherine said, it's running on a Tuesday and a Saturday classes, and yeah, there's no simple answers to some of these questions, but if you really take a deep dive, you know, you can get to be your own expert, and that's what I was hoping to do with the yucca example in particular, is really giving you the tools to go, okay, I've got a weed that's not this, how do I apply this kind of knowledge to something slightly different? So yeah, giving you the tools for that kind of organic thinking, and it seems like a little bit outside the box thinking sometimes as well. Yeah, just thoroughly enjoying these chats. And let's if you've got access to autumn leaves, please go and gather them up. They are, you know, gold from heaven. It is literally a windfall landing in your laps to help build your soils. There is nothing that I can think of that's better for the garden right now than autumn leaves, other than seaweed, you know, that's a bit more work and a bit stinkier. So get those leaves in.
So
get
we've
those
got
leaves in the garden now.
We've got 2 more of these Q&A sessions planned. If you want to join again, you're welcome. Send in your questions. I've got a little poll, if you don't mind, before you go. I'll just launch it now. Just learned how to do this. So if you can just give us some feedback about what your experience of today was like. I see there's also a couple of questions. The way we've priced the upcoming courses are they're $39.95 for each one. And if you sign up for all of them for the whole year, that's 17 workshops, and you pay once and you end up just paying for 15, but you get to attend 17. And what was the other question? Yes, we will continue to offer all the sessions online. We're going to do both now. We'll do face-to-face for people who are around the Tauranga area and want to come. And then we'll do everything online. For those of you who live far away or aren't able to travel, or who knows if we're still locked down. I think that's all the questions so far. That's great.
Hi, sorry, can I ask one question about the upcoming course?
Yeah.
So the price, is that the same for face-to-face and through the Zoom meeting? Is it the same price per course, or are they priced differently? I may have missed. Sorry.
For right now, it's priced the same. I didn't want to, I don't like bookkeeping that much. I'd much rather be out.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Last year when we offered it only face-to-face, we had limitations of how many people we could have. So they were priced at $85 for the 6-hour session. You'd come here 9:30, you'd leave at 2:30, you'd bring your lunch, all that kind of stuff. But now that we have the online option, we've cut the price in half. And the idea is that we'll be able to have people who participate online. So we should be able to have more people than we can just cram into our little cottage here. So it's a bit of a financial hit for us in the start, but we're hoping that it's going to work out because there'll be people from other areas who will want to participate. So, and also with all the financial uncertainty right now and people wanting to know more about gardening, and Kazel being such a generous person and just wanting to share, we just thought, okay, come on, chop the price in half, offer it face-to-face and online, and then hopefully we'll get enough people that it'll be financially viable so we can continue to do it. So whatever kind of support you can offer in terms of joining, sharing it with your friends, any of that kind of stuff would just be great.
And if I can just add another, thanks. If I can just add another point about the way that even the face-to-face classes are going to be running, because what we have is now a big body of recordings of the classes that I've taught in the past. So one of the ways that we can keep doing it is by showing everybody, even if they're coming to the face-to-face, everybody will start by watching a pre-recorded video of a class session. And then it's about having the face-to-face is really about the practical stuff. So we get to take a cutting. But we actually did a Zoom cuttings class. And some of the feedbacks from the students was that actually that was a really good way of doing it. They really got to see what everybody had showing the camera. Here's my little stick. And it went really well. So it's amazing how much this technology can bring. So the classes aren't running like they used to. Even when they are face-to-face, we're still using the technology, and the pre-recorded videos is a big chunk of that. And I think that's one way that we're keeping those costs and work down as well.
Oh, thank you very much. I look forward to the coming year, and I'm definitely prepared to sign up for the full course. It's been very interesting so far. Thank you for the opportunity to listen in and learn for the last few weeks in this lockdown.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Really
and we've got a couple more to go, so please do invite your friends.
Yeah, it's been fun, Lucky.
I'll try my best.
Lucky, it's been fun to see your emails come through. It's like, oh, Lucky's going to join us again. Oh, fun. I'm already starting to get to know people a little bit. There's a number of people who've really been taking advantage. It's great. I'm always learning something.
Yeah, look, I've been really enjoying the opportunity to just learn a bit more. Living rurally, there's not really much opportunity to get out there and learn from many other people in my community. So having this online course has been really, really easy and informative.
You know what I really like about the name of our course is the Gardening Essentials, and one of the reasons it's called that is because I'm teaching you the essential stuff that you need to know. We thought about calling it the Garden Expert because you'll be an expert at the end of it, but the Gardening Essentials, but the more we've been experiencing this kind of community of online learning and the focus on gardening through lockdown and through being at home, gardening is essential. It's it's part of how we nurture and heal and make the world a better place. So I'm really glad to be offering it. I'm glad you're here, Lockie. Thank you.
No, thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna. Oh, Karen's got a question. I'm gonna end the poll here.
Just jump in on a question. Thank you for firstly, thank you for the Zoom. I'm in Southland, and I really appreciate this. It's so cool. Grew up in the North Island though. The Tuesday planned workshops, what time of the day would they be, and would the Saturday ones be this sort of time?
Yeah, we're it seems like the 9:30 to 2 or 2:30 works pretty well for most people. Kazel and I go back and forth about what are the times of the week that are best for most people, and we chose Tuesday 9:30 to 2:30 because that seemed to work for a lot of parents. The kids are in school, they can get them to school, have time to go pick them up, but then they're free during that chunk. And it's been sort of an experiment. We haven't had the enrollment on Tuesday that we have had on Saturday. Saturday can be busy with sports and other activities. So Kazel and I go back and forth. It's like, well, maybe we should offer a Saturday and a Sunday, or, so, I mean, we're open to hearing from people what works, because she and I can be pretty flexible. Do you have an opinion?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I was just thinking when I heard Tuesday, I was thinking, oh, it must be Tuesday evening, like an evening course. But then, of course, that doesn't work out necessarily showing things in a garden or, you know. So, yeah, I mean, for me personally, Saturday would be what I would be looking at.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And I think one of the nice things about what we're offering this year, the fact that it's online, a lot of the course, you know, the practical stuff, again, we're going to record that. So it's possible that you could do all the watching of the class and recording sessions that you weren't actually present for in your own time. It's less good because you don't get this kind of like interaction directly, but if for some people that might be just a really nice way of getting the information. So we've got ways to explore that as well.
I guess I would say if any of you are interested in doing the course and you have an opinion about times and days, it'd be good for us to know, because we can still move things around. I think we're pretty much set on the Saturday 9:30 to 2-ish, but we could move the Tuesday to another day if that would work better for people. This kind of chunk of 4 to 4.5 hours seems to be good because Kaisel's presentations are fantastic, and that usually takes up the first 1.5 or 2 hours. And then there's usually a practical component afterwards. So the 4.5 hours seems to be about the right amount of time, with a couple of breaks in there for lunch and tea and that kind of thing.
We are a little bit building this airplane as we go. So we're moving on to this online technology, and we're just trying to figure out how it works. So we reckon we've done a really nice job of thinking it through, but there's always going to be something in the launch that's going to change, and we go, oh, maybe there's some better ideas out there. So we're totally open to hearing better thoughts. But what I like is the idea that you guys can watch the video of the class in your own time, and then we have a shorter session, a lot like today's, where it's, all right, you watch that, talk to me about it. And then there's another section, which is the practical, at Plenty Permaculture's location, where we can actually take cuttings and get in the dirt. So a combination of those sorts of three aspects, where you've got the delivery of the content, the practical stuff, and the question and answer sessions could all be separated out in some ways. I don't know. We're still thinking.
There's a couple of people who despise being on the computer. And they said to us, please, 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 please keep the face-to-face component. But they also live nearby, and they've gotten used to it. One of them, poor thing, she has such bad internet. She was in her car, drove to the neighbor's hill, the highest point around, and she was there with her dog that she had to manage. And then some bull was like nearby and acting in a threatening way. She's like, please, can we please come back? So we're trying to, make it all work. So yeah, just keep sending us information so that we can make the best choice for you guys. There was one question about price. Yeah, they're $39.95 for each session, whether it's online or face-to-face. Can you watch previous recorded sessions? Yes, I think we're going to make that possible. I'm just really getting educated on the whole videos online thing. But for people who are signing up for the whole course, we should, you'll get this beautiful handout. Kaisel does these handouts that are like 50 or 60 slides long that you get ahead of your course so you can take notes on it. And then we are recording everything. And I imagine that we would create a library for those who are part of the whole course that you can go back and forth and listen on your own. But thank you for letting us know that's something you want. Anything else before we bring it to a close? Last question, what's the price of the full course again? It's $599 and maybe 95 cents. It's $35.95 times 15 because you're getting 2 free ones if you just pay once at the beginning. That not only makes it so I don't have to do a lot of bookkeeping, but it also gives us a bit more security. We need a certain number of people to actually sign up so that, you know, we can make this work for Kazel and I. So yeah, it's about $599 for the whole 17 workshops. Okay. I think that's all of it. It's 5 after 11. That's not bad. Thank you everybody for joining. It was really fun. And what else? Kazel, you did a great job. Thanks for taking time out of your day to do this again.
Awesome. And say hello to your mothers if you can. Or light a candle for tomorrow. Yeah, enjoy Mother's Day wherever you are, and whether you're isolated or have access.
Great. See you everybody. Thanks very much.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.
Bye, Yvonne.
Bye.
Bye, Chloe. Kazel, do you want to chat for a second or should I call you back?
Call me back, yeah.
Okay.